my lovely listeners. This is the Rediscovered podcast. It's our third episode. Today we're discovering the strange and newly found history of the most famous old cemetery. That cemetery was created in 1843. It is now sadly a closed site, but burials do still occasionally happen if you have a family member there who was already a corpse. Here to answer our lovely questions is our amazing special guest, Yota. Thank you for coming to our show, Yota. This is our third episode of the Wedding Rediscovered podcast. We find the new and unknown parts of wedding history. Are you ready to begin?
I am ready, Tom. Can't wait.
Good. We always love the enthusiasm over here. Now, podcast, would you please introduce about your involvement in the wedding cemetery to our lovely listeners?
Oh, of course. My name is Yota Dimitriabi, and I'm Professor of Computing Education at the Institute of Education, University of Reading. I live in the area. I live in East Reading, and I'm always intrigued about the cemetery.
Yeah, it's so strange that towns full of life can be so focused on death. It's an oxymoron of insanity.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the same continuum. This is part of life. And what I found very interesting when I visited the cemetery is how people remember the loved ones after they die. The beautiful monuments that they sometimes build, or if they don't have the money, how they remember the dead. So for me, remembering people after they die is really important.
Of course. Memory is what keeps us alive. Speaking of graveyards, is there any in the actual cemetery that you're quite fond of?
Wow, every time I go there, I discover a new area that I love. But if you ask me for my top favorite, it's in the what we call non-conformist part of the cemetery, people who were not Church of England. And there is a lady buried there. Her name is Mary Gordon Burnett.
Oh, I think I've been to that graveyard. Isn't that the one with the giant bathtub on top of it?
There is, yeah.
Oh, that one is amazing.
Yeah, do you like it?
Yeah, I've been there myself for a while.
Yeah, what do you like about that grave?
Simple, the actual stone structure, how it's built up, and how there's an actual little blurb description instead of just an epitaph saying she was loved or she was remembered or something like that.
Yeah, well, your whole family is buried in that grave, and one of the names there has Charles Dickens in it. What do you think?
Now we have someone so famous buried here.
Yeah, they are, and they are related to the author, Charles Dickens, so she's sort of his half-niece. But she was an amazing woman, such an activist for her time.
Who knows, maybe next time we do an episode on her.
Oh, yes, please. That would be great.
Oh, of course it would be. But a future episode for future products. Anyway, when it comes to wedding history, what's your favourite period of it and why?
It's very tricky for me to choose, but I think I got fascinated with the time that the cemetery opened, around 1840s, because it was an amazing time for Reading. If you think about on the 30th of March, 1840, Great Western Railways opened in Reading.
I know, finally the working class could get to work without having to worry about walking through the smoke and the smog and catching stage 4 lung cancer in the blink of an eye.
Yes, now you can do it in the compartment of a train, isn't it? After the smoke of other people smoking their cigars. And also, I think 1839 is when the Royal Berks Hospital opened.
Oh yes, that was an amazing move forward for Reading. Amazing. Lots of people find maybe get medical care which was inaccessible for them for a while.
Absolutely. So Reading was the place to be, and a lot of people moved there. And some of our dignitaries, some of our famous people buried in the cemetery, moved to Reading. They were not born in Reading. So I find that fascinating.
Yeah, fascinating how someone who's never even born here can have such an impact on this amazing town. Really.
Yeah, and people visiting the Reading Museum see some glimpses of how Reading must have looked like during that part of Victorian times.
Yeah. Is there anything you wish people should know about the history or should know more?
I think everybody, if they can, should visit the cemetery, because they will find an amazing historical space, a beautiful natural resource, and if they cannot, because not all parts of the cemetery are accessible, maybe they can visit the website. We've got a project website called Reading Old Cemetery.
Yeah, you even have like a little 90s style opening where you can click them out and just open, the actual gates open up. It's must taking you hours to get that done.
Do you like it?
Yes, of course I like it.
That's
if I
good.
didn't, I wouldn't be saying so.
Oh yeah, of course. Then that's what we want. We want young people to find out more about the cemetery and visit with their families, because you are the custodians. You are the ones who are going to protect this beautiful space. So
carrying it on to the next generation of gravekeepers, I guess.
Or everybody who lives in Reading, because you will find out something that interests you about Reading. I definitely started seeing Reading in a different eye after I visited the cemetery.
So basically, the best way to know about the living is to know about the dead.
Yeah, I agree. That's very wise, Tom.
Well, it seems to be the second time, because 10 minutes, but it seems to have ran out of questions here.
Oh, well, I really enjoyed talking to you about the cemetery. Thank you for inviting me and asking me all these questions. But do you like visiting the cemetery?
Of course I do. If I didn't I wouldn't be doing an entire podcast episode on it.
Ah, yes, of course. And you helped us so much with the Heritage Open Day.
Oh yes, it was horribly raining during that time, but I did not show my displeasure during any of it.
You were very brave. You're very brave and in character. Do you want to share and remind your listeners about that day?
Oh yeah, I don't remember who I was that day. That day I just kind of fell into go.
You were a famous
oh yeah, the man who
Mr.
covered railways,
weren't you?
Yeah, it's basically not really drama. It's quite an easy thing to just fall into a role. That's why I saw it. It's not me out performing to people, out talking to people. It was just them. They were like talking to himself.
You were great.
And hopefully, who knows? Maybe we'll get to another event soon. How long has your family business done funerals in the old cemetery?
Well, so the business goes back to 1826. And interestingly, the founder is buried in the cemetery. So I'm not sure whether the cemetery was first or he was first.
No, maybe he conduct his own funeral.
But he certainly and other forebears would have conducted funerals at the cemetery.
Yeah, for about 200 years now.
200 years, yes.
Well, technically not 198, but yes.
Yes.
Okay, on to the next question. Are there any infamous or famous burials your business have been involved in?
Well, do you know, that's where the records don't really help us, because when I look around at some of the names and the big monuments that are in Reading Old Cemetery, I'm sure that a proportion of them would have been buried there by my forebears, but no one's ever thought to keep a sort of log of infamous or famous people. And to be honest, in the more recent years, people have become more sensitive about data and being careful what you say. So I suspect it's not going to be as easy as all that to go back and find out now. But I'm sure if there were logs and the big paper records, there would be a mention of Walker family names in amongst those who signed off various burials and other things in the cemetery.
There you go. And for another question of funerals, what's different about the Victorian funerals compared to more modern day ones?
Well, do you know, that's quite an interesting conversation to have now, because if you look at a typical funeral director in 2024, they're still largely dressed in Victorian clothes. So they have tailcoats and top hats, and often you see horses and they've got ribbons and all that sort of stuff, which is very much a Victorian style. And there has become a little bit of a movement towards removing that style in the last couple of years, probably since the pandemic, where it's become a bit less Victorian in style, a little bit more modern in its and contemporary in its nature. But I think that, you know, the colour black, for example, is not a Victorian colour of mourning, it's a British colour of mourning, and lots of other cultures have different colours. Sikhs, Hindus, white, Sikhs, I think it's purple, so there's lots of different colours which just mean the same thing, and it's not just about Victorian. But I think that we're going to see the remnants of the Victorian style still flowing through funerals, traditional funerals in the UK for some years to come. Black hearses, black vehicles, coffins of a particular shape, that sort of thing. And although there are introductions of things which are different, a lot of that is a bit like a marketing ploy to try to change things just because you can disrupt a market.
There seem to be marketing in funerals.
Well, there's a little bit of marketing. There's a lot more marketing about funeral plans than there is funerals, but and increasing the marketing is going towards price rather than quality or what it includes or the purpose and value of a funeral.
So style over function.
It's actually more about the economics. So I think if you look at the purpose of a funeral, it has a natural purpose of allowing people to get used to grief and the death of the person and the absence of the person in the future. If we don't have funeral ceremonies, that will then be lost as an opportunity. So I think that the funeral ceremony that continued through the Victorian era was very much about people collecting together and celebrating a life. And you can see the celebration in the style of the monuments which are at Reading Old Cemetery.
Yeah, you can see, some of those statues are made in marble.
Yes.
It cost thousands.
Yeah, and it wouldn't have come from this country, it would have probably come from Italy or somewhere like that.
Yeah, because sadly England has its own marble mines or whatever.
No, there's not much. So there's granite, and but not a lot of marble. And of course Purbeck stone, which is very traditional, but that's not used very often. It was used sort of after Victorian era.
Yeah, kind of fell fashion.
Yes,
fell into it.
Fashions of headstones and the natures of stone.
Yes, kind of an interesting topic. Are there any myths about funerals or about the old cemetery that you'd like to debunk on our podcast?
Well, I think that people always have, they've always met someone colloquially down the pub who's told them something about what happens when people die. And it might be whether they've been buried alive or anything like that. It's really, really so unlikely that I think that people should be quite reassured that by the time that they've been buried in Reading Old Cemetery, they were definitely dead.
Especially if they're being embalmed, because that's a bunch of fluids going across the body.
Yeah, that's right. So, and of course, I think it's just people's natural fear of the unknown that they start to believe some things which are quite irrational about and suggestive about what might be happening to people. But I think that, I can definitely say from my point of view that I find Reading Old Cemetery quite a natural place to visit. It feels peaceful despite the aircraft going over and the traffic surrounding it, and that's really the purpose, was to have a place where people could feel able to reflect on the relatives and loved ones, as opposed to feel oppressed by
a place to celebrate life.
Yeah. So we've got, if you look at the lovely memorials that are around, a lot of them are in the style of the person, both in the size to represent the person's civic importance, but also in, some of them are quite friendly and some of them are quite stark, and I suspect that's all about personality.
You can learn a lot about a person from their death, I guess.
Yes, yeah. And there's 2 or 3 where there are statues of the person in life. So.
I think there's one of like an air marshal or something.
Yes,
yeah, that's the one made of marble, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right. Wasn't that as a racing driver?
Oh yeah, yes. Apparently he died during the war.
Yeah, I think he. So in a way that's quite nice, and actually the modern take on the same thing, which has really been introduced from Polish people who've come here where it was traditional to have a photograph on the headstone in Poland and bits of that part of the Europe, and so you often now see photographs and pictures which have been blasted onto the stone to represent the person. So it's less than just the name inscribed in stone.
But it's not just the name, there's the epitaph on it as well.
That's right. And of course, if you look at what was written in 1850, it would be the same in 2024. It was in loving memory, it had the dates of people's lives. And I suppose if there was a style that's crept in a little bit, there's now the introduction of things like football shirts and colours on headstones, just because technology has allowed that sort of inscription to occur. But and I think the amazing thing as well, if you look at the names, because if you look at the names that were prominent in 1850, and then you look at the names of people, there have been fashions almost in names, and we're almost returning back to some of those old Victorian names now, and biblical names seem to be quite sort of common, and I think that's really lovely, because it shows that we're all one big community. We just happen to have lived within 100 years of each other. That's it.
Yeah, time may change, but the people don't.
Sorry,
time may change, but the people don't.
People, that's right, and feelings don't change. And the purpose of the cemetery, of course, is to have an area which is set aside and revered in the memory of those people.
Thank you to both of you for coming here today to speak on weddings where and rediscovered history. Thanks for loving us and for listening along to our discussion. I hope you tune to our next episode on the brutal Brits and how it shifted this town into a new age.